Imagine this. You're standing next to a lever on a trolley track. Ahead of you, there's a trolley racing down a track, speeding toward 5 people who are tied up and can't move. You notice a switch next to you. If you pull it, the trolley will be diverted to another track, but there's a person tied up on this second track. If you pull the lever, you'll save 5 people, but at the cost of 1 life. What do? This is the infamous trolley problem, one of the most well-known and debated moral dilemmas in philosophy. It forces us to confront tough questions about life, death, and what it means to make ethical decisions. Today, we'll explore the trolley problem from every angle, examining the moral theories behind it, the consequences of each decision, and how this dilemma shapes our understanding of ethics and morality. We'll also delve into real-life applications, contemporary variations, and what this age-old thought experiment tells us about the human condition. Part 1. The basic trolley problem, the ethical dilemma. Let's start with the classic setup. You're standing at the controls of a trolley. The trolley is headed towards 5 people who are tied to the tracks. If the trolley keeps going, all 5 will die. But there's a lever in front of you. If you pull the lever, the trolley will switch to a different track, but there's 1 person tied to this second track. So, the question is simple. Do you pull the lever and kill 1 person to save 5? Or do you do nothing and let the trolley continue, killing 5 people? At the core of this dilemma lies a fundamental question. How do we make ethical decisions? Part 2. Ethical frameworks for decision-making. To truly understand the gravity of the trolley problem, we need to explore the ethical theories that shape how we approach such decisions. These theories are the backbone of moral philosophy and help us navigate the complexities of right and wrong. Utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number. One of the most well-known frameworks for understanding the trolley problem is utilitarianism. Developed by philosophers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, utilitarianism suggests that the morally right decision is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people. In the case of the trolley problem, a utilitarian would argue that pulling the lever to save 5 lives at the cost of 1 is the right choice. Because you're minimizing harm and maximizing well-being for the greatest number of people. In simple terms, the utilitarian calculus values outcomes, not intentions. The idea is that if you have to choose between saving 5 lives or 1, the choice is clear. Saving 5 people produces more happiness and less suffering than saving just 1. It's the cold, hard math of ethics. More lives saved means a better overall outcome. However, while utilitarianism might seem straightforward, it raises a whole set of questions. Is it ethical to sacrifice 1 life for many? Does the end justify the means? These are tough questions that require deeper thought. Deontology, the duty to act. On the other side of the ethical spectrum, we have deontology, a theory most famously associated with Immanuel Kant. Deontologists believe that morality is not determined by the consequences of an action, but by the action itself and whether it aligns with a moral rule or duty. For a deontologist, the decision to pull the lever would not be so simple. Even if pulling the lever saves 5 lives, a deontologist might argue that it's morally wrong to directly cause someone's death, even for a good cause. In other words, you are not supposed to actively harm others, regardless of the potential benefits. In the case of the trolley problem, a deontologist might refuse to pull the lever because it involves intentionally causing harm to the person on the second track. The focus here is on following moral rules or principles, not on the consequences. This perspective presents a stark contrast to utilitarianism, emphasizing the intentions behind actions rather than their outcomes. According to deontology, the ends do not justify the means. Virtue ethics, character over consequences. Another ethical framework we need to consider is virtue ethics, a theory rooted in the work of Aristotle. Virtue ethics is focused on the character of the person making the decision, rather than the action or its consequences. According to this approach, morality is about developing virtues like courage, wisdom, and compassion, and acting in accordance with those virtues. When applied to the trolley problem, a virtue ethicist might argue that the decision isn't just about calculating the number of lives saved or lost. Instead, it's about what the moral person would do in this situation. Would they be compassionate enough to pull the lever and save 5 lives? Or would they be too concerned about the harm caused to the one individual? Virtue ethics focuses on moral character rather than just rules or outcomes. Part 3. Variations of the trolley problem. While the basic trolley problem involves a decision about whether or not to pull a lever, there are countless variations of the thought experiment that introduce different moral complexities. The fat man variation. In this version of the problem, you're standing on a bridge overlooking the trolley tracks. The trolley is headed toward the 5 people again, but this time, there's a large person standing next to you. You could push this person off the bridge onto the tracks, and their body would stop the trolley, saving the 5 people. The dilemma is the same. Do you push the fat man to save 5 lives, or do you refrain from action and let the trolley continue its course? This variation forces us to confront even deeper moral questions about the act of sacrifice. Pushing someone to their death feels much more direct and personal than pulling a lever. Is it more acceptable to cause harm if it's less hands-on? Is the act of pushing someone truly any different from pulling the lever? Or does the fact that you're physically involved change everything? The bystander effect. The trolley problem can also bring into question our natural tendencies as bystanders in life and death situations. Would we act to save others in a real-life emergency, or would we hesitate and hope someone else steps in? The bystander effect is a phenomenon where people are less likely to offer help in an emergency when there are other people around. In the context of the trolley problem, what if you're not the one making the decision? What if you're just an innocent bystander, watching the trolley race toward its victims, with the power to act but not the responsibility to do so? Would you make the same moral decision if it were someone else's life on the line? Part 4. Real-life applications of the trolley problem. Now that we've explored some of the philosophical theories and variations of the trolley problem, let's step into real-world situations where this ethical dilemma comes to life. Self-driving cars. One of the most striking real-world applications of the trolley problem is the ethical programming of self-driving cars. Imagine a scenario where a self-driving car is speeding toward a group of pedestrians. The car has 2 options: swerving to avoid the pedestrians, but in doing so, it could crash and harm the passengers inside, or it could continue its course and hit the pedestrians. How should the car be programmed to act? Should it prioritize saving the passengers inside, or should it make decisions that prioritize minimizing harm to the greatest number of people? How should AI make these moral decisions? And who is responsible for these decisions? The programmer, the manufacturer, or the passengers? These are the same moral questions raised by the trolley problem. Medical ethics and resource allocation. Another real-world application of the trolley problem comes in the context of healthcare and resource allocation. Imagine a hospital with limited resources during a crisis, like a pandemic. The doctors have to decide who receives life-saving treatment and who doesn't. Do they prioritize the person who has the best chance of survival, even if it means sacrificing others? Do they use a utilitarian approach, saving as many lives as possible, or do they follow a different ethical framework? In cases like these, decisions can be just as life-altering as pulling the lever on the trolley track. Part 5. The trolley problem in the context of society and human nature. So, what does the trolley problem really tell us about human nature and society? The trolley problem pushes us to confront our own biases, our tendency to prioritize certain lives over others, and the conflict between our logical and emotional selves. It exposes our discomfort with making life-or-death decisions and asks us to think critically about the value of a life. The moral choices we make, even in hypothetical scenarios, reflect our understanding of human rights, justice, and fairness. In the world of the trolley problem, there are no easy answers, only tough, thought-provoking questions that force us to confront the complexity of human morality. Conclusion: what would you do? At the end of the day, the trolley problem doesn't have a definitive answer. Whether you choose to pull the lever, push the fat man, or do nothing at all, each decision reveals something profound about your ethics, values, and the way you see the world. This thought experiment isn't just about trains or levers, it's about us. It's about how we make moral decisions in the real world, from life-or-death situations to everyday choices that define who we are. So, what would you do in the trolley problem? Would you pull the lever to save 5 lives, or would you hesitate and let fate decide? The answer might be more complicated than we think, and perhaps that's the point.